and we have the great pleasure of being the supervisors for Leona Wang in her PhD research. Leona's based in New Zealand as well and has come all the way from New Zealand to speak with you today. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Leona for her presentation.
Hello everyone, my name is Leona and I'm a PhD student at the Auckland University of Technology. First of all, I just like to give everyone a brief introduction about myself. I come from a background of fashion design and completed my undergraduate and honors degree in art and design and master's degree in product design. Due to my early contact with the ethnic minority groups in China, my work and research interests have always been focused on their culture and craft works. The work and design philosophies of the artisans from the minority villages have greatly influenced my understanding towards both modern design and of traditional handicrafts. My current research is motivated by my enthusiasm and love for traditional textiles and also the concern about the endangered state of traditional craft practices. In the first place, I would like to give everyone a quick overview of this talk. This talk is based on my current PhD research. My doctorate study is a practice-based project that focuses on modern technology as well as the endangered crafts and the culture associated with minority groups in China. My research attempts to investigate and understand what aspects of traditional craft can be translated into contemporary textiles through material and making process. It is also an exploration about how storytelling through traditional textiles could be applied in modern context. The main objective of my research is to add the main object of my research is to add a new dimension to traditional craft by integrating modern technologies such as electronic textiles to rejuvenate them. By embodying culture and memories as narrative into fabric, I hope my research will give additional meaning and value to textiles or clothes. In addition, it is also an effort to preserve endangered craft by employing contemporary interactive technologies as this may provoke a greater interest by younger people in learning these crafts, as well as encouraging educational institutions to consider the potential of including craft-based courses in the future. This talk will begin with a brief introduction of traditional craft, followed by discussions about the current state of crafts and the issues surrounding them. The second part discusses examples of encoded textiles, key techniques, and e-textile. The final section concludes with presentation of some textile examples. So the HCA defined craft as a practice which employs manual dexterity and creative ability in making objects by hand, which are decorative, functional, or both. The term heritage craft and traditional techniques are used to refer to learned skills that utilize an understanding of traditional materials and designs to create, conserve, or restore artifacts. Daniel Carpenter, a research manager at the HCA, commented that the disappearance of heritage crafts is not only a loss of beautifully handmade objects, but also stories behind each craft and the tradition that once helped shape the people and history. The combing pattern used by the Juno Elsley group is one of the most iconic examples of history embedded in textiles. According to the legend, Juno Elsley group was left behind at a rest point during Zhuge Liang's southern expedition in 225 AD. When they finally caught up with the troops, Zhuge Liang did not allow them to join. Instead, they granted tea seeds for them to grow, and he also gave the instructions of how to build houses according to the shape of his head. The Juno group survived afterwards mainly due to these two grants. Therefore, they embroidered the combing motif on the back of adult males' clothing to commemorate Zhuge Liang and also to record the architecture that emerged during this time. There are a number of organizations worldwide dedicated to preserve these time-honored skills. For example, Nordic safeguarding practices in Scandinavia, the American Craft Council and Heritage Craft Associations in the United Kingdom. Designers such as Angel Chen, a fashion designer who draws inspiration from traditional hand-woven textile from ethnic minorities in the Guizhou area and uses them in her designs in order to preserve the indigenous handcraftsmanship. However, in spite of these efforts, we still have crafts heading for extinction or becoming critically endangered each year. The current global situation of traditional crafts have clearly illustrated the need and urgency for more research in this field in order to find a viable method to bring more vitality into our heritage. There are 5 main issues that have contributed to the abandonment of traditional crafts. They are education and employment, aging population, perceived value, and material shortage. Moreover, due to the economic downturn caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, crafts have faced additional difficulties and challenges. According to the research published by the Heritage Craft Association in May 2021, the total number of endangered crafts increased to 74, along with an additional 20 new critically endangered crafts added between March 2019 and May 2021. In this section, I would like to discuss some ancient examples of encoded textiles. Firstly, the dragon robe, as the name implies, was a bright yellow emperor outfit which was highly decorated with a total of 43 dragons. Because the dragon pattern was restricted to be worn solely by the ruler, embroidered python patterns were developed for the prince and other court officials to use at important occasions. Python robes were also differentiated by color and pattern. Another example of communication through textile pattern is bufu, a uniform for nobles. It has an embroidered rectangular detachable badge at the front of the robe. The information of the wearer's status, rank, and title is transmitted visually through the rank badge. For example, civil officers at degree 1, the highest, wore the crown. And degree 9 wore spiral. Military officers at degree 2 wore lion, and degree 4 wore tiger. The metaphorical matching of animal characteristics to different job responsibilities is a unique way to embed meaning into textiles. On the other hand, minority groups in China use textiles to record ethnic culture and to journal histories. The Lanjun dress, a traditional wedding dress from the Miao, is a great example to demonstrate how storytelling has been used in the context of minority cultures. The dress was created by a female leader, Lanjun, during the southernward migration to escape from advanced enemies. She created a method of utilizing colored threads to record landmarks they encountered on her clothes during the journey. She later created an exquisite wedding dress with all the meaningful landmark symbols for her daughter. The example identified that the features portrayed in ethnic costumes are not detailed historical facts, but have been created to recall or commemorate significant fragments of major historical events. These craft works have gained additional value by incorporating personal perspectives or memories into them. The tin embroidery is a type of embroidery skill used by the male minority, which uses the metal tin as an additional thread in its complex embroidery patterns. The embroidery pattern used by the male people originated and have been passed down using paper cutting techniques. Each family has their own master pattern molds, also known as mother patterns. There are international designers are attempting to include the tin embroidery technique into their works through collaborating with local artisans. There are two forms of weaving and embroidery combined stitching. The first type applies needlework on top of a semi-finished patterned hand-woven fabric, comparable to modern cross-stitching. This technique effectively blended weaving and embroidery techniques together to achieve a similar aesthetic effect while substantially lessening the time frame to develop the textile. The second form of the weaving and embroidery combined stitching uses streams of embroidery thread or stripes of tinfoil as web. The other group of embroidery thread as weaved and the needle as the shutter. The notion of weaving was cleverly combined with embroidery in this technique, and the resulting textile is extremely detailed and intricate, which is impossible to produce with a traditional hand loom. So the next part is the wearable technology and e-textile. So wearable is a term that refers to technologies that employ the human body as a carrier to provide support to the user for a specific purpose. It includes various alternative names and subcategories such as wearable electronics, smart clothes, e-textile, and interactive accessories. They are created in the form of garments, accessories, or devices that provides the user with additional functionality or benefits. There has recently been a shift from literally applying or attaching electronics to fabric or clothes to the development of digital or programmable fiber. A great example is the programmable fiber developed by MIT researchers, which is the first digital fiber capable of sensing, processing, storing, analyzing, and entering activity. This approach attempts to turn e-textile into true textiles in terms of appearance and hand feel by implementing miniaturized microelectronics directly into the raw material and weaving them into smart clothing or textile artifacts at an early stage. In the following two slides, I'd like to show you two examples of interactive smart textiles. The first example is called Touch. It is a playful interactive fabric woven with conductive yarn, where each pattern of weave triggers various notes of the hump when it's touched.
Do we have to drag it across? It's on here. Do we have to drag that whole screen over? Or? Oh yeah, there it is.
So the second example is conductive sequence created by a 3D printer and inspired by traditional sequin embroidery. The researcher printed two types of sequins using conductive and non-conductive resins, which were then combined and embroidered using the traditional sequin embroidery technique. When a force such as a touch or press is applied to the conductive sequence, a signal generated from the circuit, which those sequences themselves are part of, will be sent to the computer. The computer can visualize the electronic signal of the textile and sense the changes in the state of the textile. Example on this slide, those two, demonstrate my learning process of the traditional weaving stitching. The first sample was created using tin paper, and that one used Cooper tape. And after I finished those two samples, I thought I might be able to apply the same techniques and using a TC2 weaving, digital weaving loom. So those are the samples I made using the TC2 loom. I used a various of different threads. That one is still Cooper tape, and that one is conductive threads with some traditional patterns. And those colorful ones are, one of them are UV reactive threads and temperature sensitive color changing yarn and glow in the dark yarn. Oh yes, this one. So those ones are also developed on a TC2 weaving loom, and they are different conductive yarns. Some of them are quite hard, like metal, and some of them are quite soft, which more like a fabric. So those are embroidery examples I developed using UV reactive color changing yarn, temperature color changing yarn, and conductive threads. So this one over here is the traditional net embroidery stitching. This sample was made using conductive threads and normal threads. Yeah, and normally it will be attached to a battery. This one. So those two are examples of weaving stitching, and I made them into touch and pressure sensor. So when you squeeze or press, it can connect to a battery or a LED. Yes, an output can happen. So those ones are also examples of sliding sensor using beads and tin paper. I don't have my last one here. I don't have my last one here. That's the clay one.
So these are similar to that?
Yes, similar to those.
Just say it out loud so she can similar to slide.
Yeah, this one is also a similar version of the slide sensor using beads and conductive threads. So when it's bouncing around, you can have different combination. So this one is inspired by the tin embroidery. I used the normal threads, conductive threads, and tin paper to create this sample.
It's a bit hard when they can't see them.
I know.
Yeah, I already mentioned to them if they have any question, but they can ask in Vietnamese and we will translate it.
To give we'll just pass it.
Just wait till she's. Okay. Right. Leona, I've got two questions. The first one is you've shown us lots of sensors, inputs. What are you thinking about in terms of outputs from them with the textile? That's one question. And secondly, are you going to just produce a range of samples or are you going to put them into an application?
I'm planning to put them into an application, but I'm still in the exploration stage. I want to try different combinations and different stitching, and I want to do it myself. So that's a huge learning part for me to learn all the techniques and everything. And that one on the slide is one of my latest sample. I'm trying to play with clay and embroidery threads. Conductive beads. I guess the next stage is for me to review all the samples I have and see and pick a couple of them and develop them into a textile or an application. Yeah, garment. Yeah.
If someone touches it.
Lights and interactive, like storytelling. I will work in those areas and aspects. Yeah.
So actually, when I read about the information of the event, I'm really interested in how it will be applied into reality. And I have seen the video that the person who touches the textiles, they have the sound. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong. And that questions me about because it can generate the sound and it can mixture with the lights. But actually, in reality, when you use it for for your daily life, sometimes you are in the environments that the noise from the sound or even the lights can be distracting, and that will reduce the interest of the customers to use your textiles. So how you can solve that problem? And the second question I want to ask you, because I have seen that you have been inspired by the stories and the textiles from ethnic minorities, and you want to bring it to spread it to the wider public. And that is the same case in Vietnam, because we have a lot of minorities, and we want to spread and it as our culture to international scale as well. But many audience and a lot of those creators who work in the field, they might think that it will be the case of cultural appropriation if we do not use it properly. So what do you think about it? These are my two questions.
First question, I think that's a really interesting point. I guess I haven't actually get into the application part yet. I'm still exploring possibilities of the technique and the textiles. And before I use each pattern or each technique, I'm trying to understand the story behind all the textiles and all the patterns as well. I think the storytelling part is really important for me. And I was thinking, we actually visited a couple of villages in Vietnam, and one of the village in Black Hormone really inspired me, because there's a lady, she actually recording her like what's current her daily activities in her textile. So when they build a new school, she draws those on her textiles, and she draws all the children's play games and everything. I think I really want to find a way like how we can tell our story in a contemporary sense. Yeah. Do I answer your question? We were in Paco. Yeah.
I have a small question. It's very interesting material and new material. So when you combine the traditional material with some modern material like copper, tin, paper, so have you studied the thermal property of the composite material? Because when applied to the life, it material on the material should keep warm in winter or keep cool in summer, for example. So have you studied about the thermal properties of materials?
No, at the moment I'm not looking at commercial application, and the tin material or the copper material, it's actually used by the traditional people. Like they actually use tin in their designs. That's part of my research is to try to replicate what they're using and to get the feeling and story behind it. So that's why I use those materials. Yeah, and one of my, we have another student, she's working on a project which to do with climbing, rock climbing.
another colleague of Leona's is working with rock climbing clothing, and she's looking specifically at thermal properties, so properties for heating and cooling, because obviously climbers get very hot as well. So there's quite a lot of work going on with that, and particularly with new types of fibres that are being developed that could be fibres that can heat. So Leona's project isn't dealing with that, but there is research going on in that area. I think the interesting thing with Leona's project is that she's looking at storytelling and cultural contexts and traditional techniques, and that's quite a distinctive area of smart textiles as opposed to technical textiles, which is more commercial applications and some of those areas like heating and cooling. So she's interested in the communication through textiles, say, rather than the physical or functional properties of textiles.
I also think it's quite interesting because some of those traditional textiles that we used, or materials that we used, like the tin, are actually ancient materials. What's interesting is how maybe they could be converted now using e-textiles. So they weren't used for their conductive capability back then, but now maybe some of the inherent qualities of those materials may be able to be used now in a different way, but still using the same techniques.
Thank you.
If your textiles are focusing more on the communication and storytelling, so I have a question that who best fits your target audience? Who will use your samples and your project after your study? And is there any future plans after your study right now? Do you have any intention of applications into reality, or do you have any ideas of exhibitions, for example? Yeah.
I think for me, I was really inspired by some of the Auckland groups, when they doing their craft, they're actually singing and they actually telling story like through the music. So I think the sound part will be a big area I need to explore in my research, and I actually don't, because I'm still in the exploration stage, so I don't really have any, my application is not set in stone. So I'm still looking at different aspects I can try out, but communication and music, sound, is the main area I'm looking at right now. Yeah, and I want my main audience to be the younger generation, so they can understand more about the story and the technique and the textile, which I might be able to inspire them to actually learn those skills. So that's the main purpose of my research, and that's what motivates me to do this research.
So during the presentation, I heard about the e-textiles from the RMIT University. Can you talk about it, further, how can I discover more further information about this project, or?
I think they're, sorry? I think they're talking about the MIT. I think they're also at the early stage of their, I think they're also at the early stage at their research.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, but there was like a paper online announced that they developed the new digital yarn. Is that your question?
So I want to know that where can I find more information about that?
Yeah, from MIT.
From the RMIT library or?
No, MIT.
MIT.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
United States.
Oh, like searching on the Google?
Yeah, on Google.
Oh, okay.
There's also another group at Nottingham Trent University in the UK, which Professor Tilak Dias has done a lot of work in terms of combining microcomputing into yarn. So the MIT group is working separately in the United States, and then there's another group at Nottingham Trent University in the UK. And you can find information about that online. If you go to Nottingham Trent University and look for e-textiles, you'll find, because I think the MIT work at the moment is still experimental, so they've produced a small amount. He's actually, in Nottingham Trent, actually developed a production system, because the big problem is yarn producers are used to producing yarn. Electronics producers produce mobile phones and don't know anything about yarn. And so actually coming up with a production system that allows you to bring those two totally different processes together has been a major problem. So have a look at Nottingham Trent and then also have a look at MIT. But I think with Tilak's project you can purchase yarn, but it will be extremely expensive. But it's worth looking at.
Yeah. Thank you. So you're studying like in the fashion industry, or can you tell a little bit about your background?
So I used to be in the fashion industry. So I did my undergraduate and honors in fashion, and then my master's in product design, but it's also related to fashion. And then for my PhD, I'm actually at the creative technology department. So it's a really different experience for me, because I know nothing about technology before I started my study. I have more background around fashion, clothing, textile instead of like technology. I try to, in my research process, I try to collaborate with engineers who can actually give me information about all the technology. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for coming.